Right.
All right.
All right, well, welcome everybody to the weekly Conservation Sciences Seminar. This week we have our very own Holly Menninger. Finally could get her for the seminar series. She's going to talk about the Bell Museum. You're all familiar with the Bell, but there's a lot of really cool stuff going on there and a lot of amazing opportunities for grad students to get involved, either through kind of your own projects and working with somebody. You're probably going to talk a little bit about that today. It's a really great place for outreach kind of stuff. So if you see something you know that might fit in for you on this service, outreach component is a very important part of all of our positions these days. We need to reach general audience as well. Heidi's going to talk about that today. I also want to introduce Heidi.
Holly.
Holly.
I
No, sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry. I didn't. That's like, I know it. I don't know why I said that. I'm sorry, Holly. So Holly also, what's near and dear to my heart about Holly is she's also a scientist at heart.
Yeah.
So she's one of us. So she's a hard grinder to start with, but has amazing outreach experience. So we're really lucky to have somebody that has the science background and also the education component.
Thanks.
We value that a lot here at the Bell because, you know, it makes communication a little bit easier lots of times. So
Thanks,
with
guys.
that, I'll go ahead and introduce Holly.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you. I do that at every Bell talk too. And I'm like, people just look at me like, what is happening? I want to double check for the people online, making sure you can hear. Can I get like a thumbs up or something in the chat or say that you can hear? Because I see you out there. Okay. Well, I'm assuming that the chat's not blowing up. So that means that everyone can hear me, hopefully. It's a pleasure to be here. I don't know why I haven't been invited to the Cotton Science Seminar before. I'm just saying. I've been here at the Bell for 8 years, but I thought is there a Cincinnati people? Woo woo! Who day? I don't know if you want to say that out loud. Not these days. So I thought I would start by giving just a little bit of background about me as you kind of understand the lens through which I see the world and our museum's work. Then I want to give an overview of the Bell Museum because hopefully all of you have been there. It's okay if that you haven't. Please consider my talk to you today as my invitation for you to come over. And for the graduate students, all University of Minnesota students receive free admission to the Bell Museum. You just have to show your ID. So I hope you come over. And then I'm gonna talk about a few examples of, I can't talk about all of our work. I only have 45 minutes. I'm gonna highlight a few examples of work we're doing in community and work that we're doing related to climate. And then I'll end with a few opportunities for graduate students for you all to think about how you might engage with us and kind of come into the fold. So minus the outburst before, I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I have a long history in museums. Oddly, the Bell Museum is my first professional museum job, but my first job in high school was working at the Cincinnati Museum of Natural History. The place is now called the Cincinnati Museum Center. It is in this beautiful Art Deco building that used to be a train station called Union Terminal. And I even admit, I will show you, that's my badge from as a high school student. I hang on to that to keep me real, to remember those roots about where I came from. And I worked on the floor of the museum. So I led hands-on demonstrations. I interpreted our Ice Age exhibit. We had a giant sloth, which is pretty cool. We have an amazing mammoth at the Bell Museum, but the Jefferson's ground sloth was pretty cool. We had both places have giant beavers, which I will note are also Minnesota state fossil. I don't have a picture of the giant beaver, sorry about that. But I was part of a program called the Lab Rats, which is learning about biodiversity, research, and teaching science. And that's where I really got hooked into science communication, where my eyes were first opened to the possibilities of a career in science. Museum curators and scientists were the first people I ever met with PhDs. And I had the opportunity to learn about their research and connect with them. Oddly, by the time I finished in high school, I was pretty convinced that I wasn't going to work in a museum because I spent too much time doing birthday parties, visitor service kinds of things, and I was really hooked on science. I should also tell you, I'll tell you a little bit more about where I went from there. I also identify as a bug person, as an entomologist. I've always been fascinated with insects. And so I went to undergraduate at Denison University in Ohio, and then went on to earn my PhD at the University of Maryland. And in 2004, when the Brood 10 17-year cicadas emerged, I was well situated in an entomology department and had the opportunity to trial by fire, really, to do all kinds of outreach, science communication, and public engagement. That quite honestly shifted my career trajectory. I thought I was going to be a professor at a small college like I went to, and really fell in love with connecting with communities, connecting with the public, making things that are scary, like these giant, loud, red-eyed insects that descended upon Washington, D.C., actually emerged from the ground in Washington, D.C., something really special. I still have a fondness for cicadas, so anytime there's a brood emerging, you will often see me go out on a cicada safari. They are quite fantastic. So also this is where my first television interview was live on CNN, which was kind of crazy, but I loved it. Was very fun. Again, you're seeing like this is Holly's life. You're seeing me age over time. I will also note, Cincinnati person, Bill Hemmer, he's done some unfortunate things since his career, but he grew up in Cincinnati and he was a West Sider. So that was exciting to be interviewed by him. Okay. So after graduate school, I kind of zigged and zagged, working in roles at the interface between science and the public. So my first job out of grad school was working in science policy in Washington, D.C. So I was essentially a lobbyist for science. I went to the Hill and advocated for increased funding for NSF. I helped take scientists to the Hill to talk about why their research matters. I worked on issues that affected the abilities for scientists to do their jobs and to be effective in their jobs. So things like biosecurity and even investments in collections infrastructure. Also related to that was issues related to science education. The time I worked in DC was at a time when there were a lot of threats, and there still are, across the country about teaching evolution in the public school classroom and helping communities understand what is science and why evolution was important to be there. So science policy, I worked in extension at Cornell for a while on issues related to invasive species. I should stay in the camera, sorry people online. And then had the opportunity to go to NC State University, where I helped lead a program that was a citizen science and outreach program that was really focused on engaging the public and the biodiversity in their daily lives. So things like skin microbes that live in their belly button, ants that lived in backyards and neighborhoods. That's a place where ant biodiversity has been pretty well studied in deserts and in the tropics. We don't have a great handle on what that looks like in the places, urban ant biodiversity, in the places where people live. We studied giant jumpy crickets that lived in people's basements and crawl spaces. Those are camel crickets. Interestingly enough, the first record, this aside, sorry, I like to have asides. So we surveyed people all across the country. Do you have these? Please send us your pictures of your camel crickets. Because when you have them in your house, they're aggressive in the sense that they jump at you. They don't jump away from you. They like to take over particularly damp spaces like crawl spaces, basements, laundry rooms. They leave a lot of frass around. They're a nuisance. People don't like them. And so we found out that they are prevalent across the East Coast, and the species that is most common is actually not native to North America. It had managed to move and spread among houses throughout the East Coast. But the interesting part is the first record of that cricket was from Minnesota in a greenhouse, which is really interesting. I need to go into the collection and see. I've actually talked to Robin Thompson about if we can find it there. And aside, I love to talk about camel crickets. Whoops. I also talk with my hands. The last picture, other things, biodiversity kinds of things we studied were things like face mites. So we all have, sorry, people are eating lunch. We all have these what are called Demodex mites that live in the pores of our faces. Again, they haven't been well studied. There are actually 2 species that live on humans. You are not born with them. And you can actually, there's a really interesting evolutionary story. You can trace the evolution of humans through that lineage of their face mites. wild and wacky things, but it connected me. We had thousands of participants all across the country. My role at NC State evolved from leading those projects to supporting researchers across the College of Sciences to help them think about how they might better engage public audiences, how they can be successful. I trained a lot of graduate students in science communication, and I partnered a lot with museums and science centers and science festivals. And so when I heard about an opportunity of this museum, this university-based museum in Minnesota, that was really in the process of reinventing itself and building a brand new building, I was really excited. I love building things. I had been thinking and reflecting on that time in high school when I showed you those pictures. I'm like, well, maybe I would like a career in a museum. And so I applied and arrived at the Bell Museum about 8 years ago. In my first role as the Director of Public Engagement and Science Learning, I was responsible for exhibits, programs, planetarium, and then really fortunate about 2 years ago to be appointed as the director of the museum. Kind of take a breath. I'm going to have some water. Okay. But I thought maybe we go back in time. As I told you, I want to tell you a little bit about the history of the Bell Museum. So that location at the corner of Larpenteur and Cleveland is not the Bell Museum's first home. In fact, I think we've had 4 homes over time. Previously, we were located on the East Bank campus, right across from the Armory on Church Street there. The Bell Museum is 153 years old. We were founded in 1872 by legislative statute. We were charged with collecting, preserving, and interpreting the biological record of Minnesota, and for that to be held in perpetuity at the University of Minnesota. So one thing that has always kind of stood the test of time for the Bell is our relationship to the university. So our scientific collections are really at the heart of our founding and who we are and what we do. I'll be able to tell you an exciting new development, kind of hot off the presses. We've had for a good while over 1 million specimens representing biodiversity here in Minnesota and across the world. And so representing animals, birds, mammals, fishes, reptiles, and amphibians, mollusks. We cannot forget the mollusks. We have plants, fungi, lichens, and then we have a collection of genetic resources. Those scientific collections are not located in the public building on Larpenteur and Cleveland, much to many people's surprise, including a rep from Fisher who rolled in last week and wanted to see the collections, but I redirected the supply company. We have 7 faculty curators. Hey, the 2 that I picked are 2 of them are here in this room, as is Ken, who help steward, grow, do research related to those collections. And so Sushma is our Breckenridge Chair of Ornithology. Cassie is our curator of fishes. And mollusks. Don't let me not forget the mollusk. I think one thing that is really exciting that has happened this year is that we've been working really closely with the entomology department, and just this summer administratively transferred. That's words on paper, but essentially it means that the entomology collections are now part of the Bell Museum. So they had always kind of the University of Minnesota insect collection. The code is UMSP for people who are really specific, had been the only natural history collection at the Bell that was not part of, or not only natural history collection at the U, that was not part of the Bell. And so with that administrative transfer, we're really excited that Robin Thompson, who's in the front, is now one of our collections managers. I forgot to mention that in addition to our faculty curators who hold tenure positions in academic departments across 2 colleges and 3 departments, we also have a staff of professional collections managers and then research staff as well. So Robin is joining our team as the entomology collections manager, joining our barium collections manager and our zoology collections manager. I think since 2016, our team has done a lot of work to digitize and make accessible our scientific collections. And so the Minnesota Biodiversity Atlas is the online portal where you can look in and you can read collections records, specimen information, and in many cases see those samples actually, those specimens actually digitized. And that work we do in collaboration, not just within our own team, but we partner with universities across Minnesota, as well as other museums and a number of state agencies. So I encourage you, if you haven't poked around the Bell Atlas, to take a look and look up your favorite taxa there. But this is a great way for us to make our collections more broadly accessible, whether that's for an interested amateur naturalist, for an educator, and certainly for scientists who uses who do collections-based research. Our curators, though, aren't just sitting in the collections, adding new specimens to that. They are active members of their academic departments. They train and mentor graduate students. They teach classes, a lot of the ologies classes that are happening across colleges and programs. And then I think one of the really exciting things about our research and collections team has been the tremendous work that has happened in the space, in the field of public engagement. And so several years ago, born out of COVID and the necessity of not to gather people in a closed room, that team launched Bell Expeditions. So every August, we set up a field tent out on the plaza outside of our public building, and our team empties out the freezers. Well, a portion of the freezers. We've never fully gone to the bottom of the freezers. No, we have not. Empties out the freezers, parts of the freezers, and are actively preparing specimens under that big tent. Our audiences are fascinated. They come, sometimes they will spend hours, sometimes they come back day after day to learn about Minnesota's biodiversity, first of all, but more importantly, like, what are museum specimens? How are those prepared? Why do specimens matter? What do you do with that information? How many different kinds of measurements are you taking off of that one critter? I can't tell. Is that a groundhog, a beaver, otter? We don't have any of the mammalogists here in the room. Do we have a mammologist in the room who can tell us what that is? I didn't show a gory picture. There are some, the loon was very bloody. The swan was very bloody, but this has been happening, but this was our 4th year that this has happened and has been wildly successful. And I double checked to make sure you didn't hear about this project recently, but I think it's an exciting one that Sushma and team are leading, is our Salvage Wildlife project, which is really about turning roadkill specimens that might just, or things that have just died in the places where people live, turning that into research, into specimens. So this is a picture of our carcass crew, which is a group of undergraduates. I think there might be some graduate students, some of our professional staff. It's a project that is supported by the Environmental and Natural Resources Trust Fund, and has been a way to really engage the public and community in thinking about specimens and contributing to the growth of our collection, and then to help us take a look at some common animals that we may not be actively growing in that part of the collection, and to be taking samples and to surveil important things like parasite load, wildlife disease, the prevalence of heavy metals. You should invite the Salvage Wildlife team to give a conservation science seminar about their great work. I should have included in my specimen, I also like to participate in our projects. And so I contributed a squirrel to our collection not so long ago. I was very proud of that. Our scientific collections are then, we try as much as we can to include them in the public museum and have them on display in our galleries and through our exhibitions. So this is a photo of our biodiversity wall that highlights a number of items across the range of biodiversity in our collections. We also bring in special exhibitions. Sometimes we make our own. Right now, we have an exhibition on display called Curious Allies that is about sort of the sort of some of the stranger species in the botanical world. It's particularly focused on botanical illustrations of fungi, lichens, and carnivorous plants. And one of the really cool things about our display of the exhibit, it's botanical illustrations from the American Society of Botanical Illustrators, is that we've been able to pair a lot of those images with specimens from our collection, so our visitors get to see those scientific specimens on display. We also include live specimens from the College of Sciences Conservatory, and so that has been a fun playing interplay. A few years ago, in honor of our 150th anniversary, we created our own temporary exhibition called Seeing Birds that was focused on the study of birds, but also it brought together the science, the long history and legacy of ornithology at the Bell Museum, along with our long history of making connections between art and science. Okay, we'll take a little tour through the Bell Museum. There's the mammoth that I talked about. So we like to say at the Bell Museum, you can take a walking tour through the major biomes of Minnesota. You start with the origins of the universe. So you're also taking a journey through space and time. Are kind of at the heart of the visitor experience in the Bell Museum public galleries are our nature wildlife dioramas. We went to extraordinary effort to move those and to restore those from our original location, or not one of our most recent location on East Bank over to here to St. Paul. And we reinstalled those dioramas in a way that tells a fuller story of the natural history of Minnesota. So rather than experience diorama halls based on taxa, the bird hall, mammal hall, we like to take people on a journey through the major biomes of Minnesota, starting in the North Woods, moving into the prairies and savannas, and then ending in the big woods, the deciduous forests of the big woods, big rivers. With our new building that opened in July 2018, we were also able to add a planetarium. So a digital domed theater that has 120 seats. We take people to the outer limits of the universe. We do shows about the night sky. And I think one of the really cool things is that we've been able to expand the story that we tell in which we engage our visitors around to include space science and astronomy as part of that larger story. We've also, in recent years, been really fortunate to start a number of, or not start, to get into the world of full dome planetarium productions. And so we've made a number of full dome films that have, some are in circulation at planetariums around the world. We have one about the brain, we have one about Mars, and then we're just launching the distribution of a show called Secrets from a Forest that we made in collaboration with the photographer Jim Brandenburg. We've won lots of awards, which is really exciting. And that will start getting distributed to planetariums around the country. That show is back on our public schedule starting November 28th. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend taking a look. We see about 130,000 visitors per year at the Bell. K-12 students are a big portion of our audience. So if you were over there right now, it would be very loud and bustling with activity, which is exciting to have that student energies, and they get to experience the galleries, the planetarium. And then I think one thing that makes our field trip program really special are the hands-on lab experiences we do. A lot of elementary school teachers in particular are not super comfortable sort of teaching the science part of their curriculum. And so we can help support and extend the science learning that's happening in the classrooms. We also like to think of ourselves as, I talked a lot about our research and collection, sort of the museum, and sort of situating us within the larger university system, that we like to be a gateway to research and scholarship that happens at the university. I think that's one of the most extraordinary things about being a university-based natural history museum, is that you have the opportunity to connect with graduate students and postdocs and staff and faculty. We partner with with a lot of faculty on the public engagement portion of their grants and their research. And we were able to bring new topics to audiences and create those moments, particularly those moments when conversation happen, for people to actually have the opportunity to meet a real deal scientist and to be inspired to do more in STEM. About let's see. In 2021, we launched our statewide engagement department. It has grown by leaps and bounds. And so since 2023, this is a map of locations across the state where we have delivered programs, lots of different kinds of programs, and hosted community events and experiences. So that ranges from, we have a portable planetarium. Think about it as like a bounce house, but that we show stars inside. We distribute hands-on science and nature kits. I'll talk a little bit more about those. We have summer camps that happen across the state, but we feel like we've really been able to lean into our work as the state's natural history museum. We're not just the natural history museum of the Twin Cities, that we want to be able to serve all of Minnesota. A few years ago, we took the opportunity to refresh our mission. So our mission now is to ignite and sustain curiosity for nature and the universe. And we were also able to articulate our vision, our future state. I wanted to kind of just highlight this because we're also in a place right now at the university. You probably heard about the university's strategic roadmap. Our college is about to embark on a strategic planning session, and we're situated within CFANS. And we did some of that own work ourselves internally a few years ago. So our vision, we envision a hopeful future where all are inspired by nature and empowered by science. And that message of hope is something that I'll hit on again as I talk about some of our work related to climate change. How are we doing on time? I can't see time, but there we go. Okay, great. All right. And with that work on refreshing our mission and our vision, we developed our own set of strategic priorities. The first three about deepening our community commitment, strengthening our science mission, and elevating climate solutions are kind of really the core to the mission-based work. The last two about stewarding capital investments is about our infrastructure and having a sound grounding as a institution. And the last is about our people. I'm not going to walk you through all that today. What I'm going to focus on are a couple of examples that I'm really proud of the work that has been happening across the museum in support of connecting our work to community, and particularly our work around climate. So the community one, I think I'm going to just hit on a few examples across a range of work. So I mentioned science and nature kits back during the pandemic, the start of the pandemic, when everything shut down, including the public Bell Museum. Summer camps were canceled, field trips were canceled. We had a lot of materials and supplies in our closet, and we were really concerned with the push to put everything online that we were missing sort of a segment of our community who may not have access to those online resources or the materials to really engage in science. And so in a very grassroots way, our staff developed these hands-on activities that we packed. We sent bins of materials home with our staff. We packed in lunch bags in our living rooms and dining rooms, and we distributed through a handful of community organizations, social service organizations. And they were a hit, and there was huge demand for that work. There was also, we were really fortunate to have a lot of support and interest from the philanthropic community. And so what started as a very much DIY in our living room kind of approach has now expanded to a program where for the last couple of years, we've been distributing 15,000 kits every year to students and families working in partnership with community organizations. I think this year we were over 80 organizations that we worked with. And those kits change every year. They have activity, science activity with easy to follow instructions. They have all the materials that you might need, and they work across a lot of different use cases. So they may work individually, like we work with libraries, a family picks it up, but they also work in summer camps and after school programs. And over the last couple years, we've also been trying to highlight the work that's happening at the Bell Museum, scientific work. So Cassie helped develop a really nice set of activities for this most recent kit. I should say more broadly too about what our goals are with that priority of deepening our community commitment. That we really want to make sure that we are connecting to communities, providing resources and opportunity, particularly for communities that have felt unwelcomed, excluded, underrepresented, not only in science, but in museums and higher ed. So we've been really working hard to engage with folks and meet them where they are, not necessarily expecting people to come to the museum. Another piece of this commitment for us is really about being a platform for organizations, as well as really centering Indigenous knowledge. We are a museum of place and the land, and it's really important to us that we are able to work in very close partnership and collaboration, and to develop programs and activities that that allow our audiences to engage with traditional ecological and astronomical knowledge. And so that's the picture on the right of an activity of the Ojibwe moon calendar that our team does for the On Native Land field trips that we launched last year, and that are really focused on traditional ecological and astronomical knowledge. And so students have spent time in the galleries, but they spend time in the galleries with guides who are interpreting some of the exhibits through that lens. We worked in very close partnership with elders and knowledge keepers and first language speakers to develop this program. We have special planetarium shows that talk about Ojibwe and Dakota star knowledge. And they've been a very successful program, and something that we're now thinking about, how can we help kind of bring some of what we learned and some of the partnership and help that feed into work that's happening in our community. We also, back to that point about being the state's Natural History Museum, we've had a number of really great partnerships with the research and outreach centers across the college. And so we host summer camp experiences for students. This past year, we were in 3 locations in Grand Rapids, in Crookston, and in Lamberton, and we're expanding to Waseca this year. So we'll have 4 of those experiences. And it's great that we've been able to work with the scientists who are, and the students who are based at the rock locations to lead those experiences. I mentioned kind of meeting people where they are. So our team is really invested in participating and engaging with new audiences at community festivals, particularly cultural community festivals. We have supported for the last couple years a cohort of BIPOC master naturalists, and have hosted training courses at the Bell. And that team this fall, went to a place called Maji Chai, which is a land sanctuary up along the North Shore, and did a bio blitz at that location. And then I would be remiss, I mentioned that this work isn't just the work of our public engagement and science learning team. It's not just the work of our statewide engagement team. All of the departments at the Bell are engaged in this work. And I want to lift up the work that our curators and staff have done to develop a collections acknowledgement. Particularly Cassie and Sushma have been deeply involved along with others, that I think it's important for us to recognize that where the history of Natural History Museums, to acknowledge some of the harm that has happened, and then to make a commitment for making our collections more accessible, and to increase that equitable access. So I'm not going to read it out loud, but I'll take a moment just to pause, drink some water, and then you all can take a look. I would also encourage you, I put the QR code there. Oh, I'm sorry that that's there. so that you can go to the collections acknowledgement on our website where we provide some additional like context, FAQs, and information. Can't tell how fast readers people are. I'm gonna go. Is that okay? Does it raise your hand if you want me to wait? Okay. Do you want me to wait? No, you're good. Okay. Uh, for our work, so with elevating climate solutions, what's really interesting as we were developing the Bell strategic plan, we hosted lots of meetings with stakeholders. We did focus groups and surveys and one-on-one kinds of interviews. And a theme that emerged from across those conversations was that people acknowledged that the Bell and our exhibits and our work, we talked about climate change, but felt like we weren't doing enough. That we had a real opportunity. This is one of sort of like the biggest existential crisis of our time. We have the opportunity as being a trusted community resource. We have a platform. We should be doing more with respect to bringing people into conversations about the climate crisis, but more importantly, about helping activate people and working towards solutions, and knowing that the University of Minnesota has tremendous amounts of work and resources and scholarship in this area, that it felt like a really important thing for the Bell to be uplifting and to be that hub of climate communication and engagement. And so the project that I want to highlight is our newly refreshed gallery called Imagine the Future. If you visited the Bell Museum at any time within the last 8 years, you may this gallery that was also called Imagine the Future is the part located in the cantilevered part of our building overlooking the agricultural fields. I didn't put the previous picture there. It was a gallery that was dedicated towards understanding sort of how can we take lessons from nature to solve some of our biggest environmental challenges, but it did it in a way that was really top down, sort of scientists say, and not in a way that drew people in. And so with the launch of our new strategic plan, and we were really fortunate to have some incredible philanthropic funding, we decided that it was really important for us to kind of take another stab at that gallery. And what we ended up doing is taking it down to the studs. We did a lot of visitor research going into before we fully launched that project. We also convened a lot of expert exhibit developer kinds of folks, people who were in the business of interpreting science about really hard environmental challenges. And we had basically like a brain trust that came and spent time in our space and had some thoughts. And so we emerged from that process with a really clear vision of where we wanted to head. And we were really proud to open that new gallery completely refreshed. It looks very different now in April of this past year. I think the first thing you'll notice as you head into the exhibit is that it is not a didactic about this is climate change and showing pictures of greenhouse gas. We start with the premise that climate change is real. It is here, it's happening, it is on us. And more importantly, there are things we can do about it. So that's where we start. And then we get in very quickly to talking about Minnesota, because it is important for it. We felt that a lot of people shut down with sort of the overwhelmed polar bear on the iceberg situation. And we wanted to like talk directly to our visitors and talk about effects that we are seeing here in Minnesota. But not talk about it in that top-down scientists say kind of way. We wanted to feature real people who are who are affected and frankly are taking action, thinking that that could be the catalyst for change. So this is a farmer, Farmer Kurt, who has been involved with the Forever Green project and has completely changed his family's farm in, oh, what is the name of the town? I'm sorry, I'm losing the name of the town. But it's here in Minnesota, southern Minnesota, has completely converted his conventional agriculture farm into an organic farm that's focused on perennial crops, things like kernza, like hazelnuts, because he's really, really motivated to inspire change. And and then likes talking to people about it and inspiring others. Whoops. There we go. If you look on the right, the setup for the gallery too is that we wanted to provide multiple ways in for our audience. And so throughout the galleries, we have we've set up a framework where we're either talking about observations. What have people noticed? What are some of the places, the habitats, the organisms that you care about here in Minnesota that where you've seen change over time? We make space intentionally for emotion. I know on any given day, I vacillate in emotions about how I feel with respect to climate. And we wanted to make space for that. And then the third frame is one really focused on action. And that our intention is that as people move through the gallery, that they leave with a plan for a next step that they would like to take. The other piece about it is that we tried to find multiple, to not just have it as text heavy, not just have it as multimedia. We wanted to have a variety of formats, including some old school mechanicals. This is a really great interactive that's about how tree species are predicted to change with Minnesota's changing climate. I mentioned emotion. We wanted to make space for those, for intergenerational conversations, for storytelling, and for reflection. So on the left is an interactive, that's a climate emotions wheel that has multiple stations. And so the idea is with some prompts, people can stand around and have a conversation about what they're thinking about the change in climate. But we also have multimedia stations where we're featuring people across the state who are doing really inspiring work. So storytelling is a key part of how we've approached the exhibit. And then the last piece is, like I said, we want people to leave with some next steps. And we are very conscious of not putting the burden entirely on like individual action, that the way forward really will involve collective action. And so trying to start those conversations, provide some ideas, particularly around areas where people may have a particular affinity. And one of the exercises that I really like that's featured in an exhibit panel is work inspired by Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. Her most recent book is What If We Get It Right? I'll tell you more about that in just a moment, but she talks about when you want to identify sort of your next climate action, it's easy to get overwhelmed. And so she suggests that you think about what you're good at, so you think about what brings you joy, and then think about what work in your community needs doing. And that is the way forward. We're super excited at the Bell that we're co-presenting Dr. Johnson as the keynote speaker for the upcoming Great Northern Festival. That is like a festival celebrating winter. They have had a climate solution series for the last couple of years that is excellent. And this year, rather than having that festival be distributed across the cities, their home base is St. Anthony, Maine. It's the last week of February. Dr. Johnson will be speaking on that last Saturday, and tickets are on sale. And maybe what I'll send out, I don't know, Ken and Nick, that the opportunity, because it's pre-sale right now, and they have great student discounts, and we have Belt member discounts and those kinds of things. But I think she'll be excellent. I'm excited about her. Oh, and on Saturday, tomorrow, you're not doing anything, come on by. We related to that climate elevating climate solutions priority, with the relaunch of the exhibit, we launched a whole year of programming that we're calling Year of Earth that features, extraordinary speakers like Dr. Johnson. The purpose of tomorrow's event is really about connecting our community to organizations that can help them, can help support their own steps, their own journey to taking some climate action. Casey, you're gonna have to say that. See, there, we know that kid. Bell children, I will say, get drafted for all of our, like your kids have been in it, my kid, like all of our children are that comes with the territory. Okay, I think I want to end just to share some upcoming opportunities for graduate students, because I think that's the majority of people here in the room. I talked about the Bell being a gateway to research and scholarship at the U. And we also want to, we don't want you to be unprepared for public engagement. We have a talented team who's really skilled at science communication, at public engagement. And so we want to support scientists in training across the U to develop those skills so that you're prepared for being an engaged scientist. And so coming up on November 19th, I know it's real soon, but we're hosting a mixer with actually some SciComm training components. That QR code is to the RSVP form. So because there's food involved, we'd love to have you sign up for that, but please check that out. Another resource I wanted to share, because I get asked all the time by students who are interested in learning more and connecting with others who are interested in science communication. There's a great group of folks that come from departments and colleges across the university. It's a real critical mass of people who care deeply about science communication. That group is called Speaking Science. They host a conference annually, so that's what's happening in April. But one of the things I was really delighted to see, I was more involved previously before I became museum director, that they now have a whole calendar of events and talks. They have a newsletter so you can stay connected. And so you can check that out at their website. Is a great place to look. Another thing in terms of thinking about how we can support graduate students. So I think a lot about the public engagement piece, but the Bell has had a very long history of supporting graduate student research. We offer National History Awards and fellowships every year. We give out about $180,000. And those opportunities are open to anyone who's doing natural history based research. You don't just have to be a graduate student of one of our curators. And so the application has not opened yet. It will in January, but you can take a look at the website and see what opportunities are available, and to see who has won those awards and fellowships in the past. But I'm really proud of the work we do to support sort of the next generation of natural history professionals. And then let me extend an invitation to participating in our public programs. We host an event called Spotlight Science, usually about once a month during the academic year, related to a theme. If we haven't connected in that space, every June we host a Spotlight Science called Sci Pride, where our goal is to really center and uplift the work of LGBTQIA+ scientists across all career levels at the museum. And so you'll hear more about us from that, more from us about that, because we advertise that opportunity pretty broadly, and it's always a super fun event. I think I'm going to stop talking until you ask me questions. But I hope that you've learned a little bit about our work at the Bell. I've kind of given you just a smorgasbord of what we do, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you. Really, I've left you speechless. I'll escape that and I'll put myself on. Nick.
So, me and the bell go way back.
Yes.
All those kids running out of the school bus.
Oh, nice.
And I'm curious about the history before then, how the bell has evolved over time.
Yeah.
It's such a long history, and the field of science and the way we approach collections has probably changed a lot.
Yeah.
So how has the bell worked to push the boundaries?
Yeah.
Flow, what's going on?
Well, I don't know if we have enough time to go through all of necessarily the long history. Maybe can I start with the present about where I think we're doing some extraordinary work, is thinking about, I think when people, their initial gut reaction to, oh, sorry, and people online, the question was about how has the evolution of our work in collections and research evolved over time. And so I think people, when I talk to people and members of the public, like they often think about that collections are sort of like grandma's attic, that they're dusty. They're not necessarily, sometimes people do. We're trying really hard to, but I think there's an unfortunate stereotype about dead things in jars and cabinets. And I think what our curators and our researchers and our graduate students are doing are like really pushing in the envelope and how we can use scientific specimens and then extend beyond the like physical dead thing in the drawer to help us understand really big and important questions in biology and ecology and documenting change. And I think so some of the examples of that work include work that Sushma and Kathy and their teams are doing that are involved in using imaging, right, to understand the structures of the, and they can talk about this way more eloquently than I can, of the birds and the fishes and answer some really important questions about the evolution of those species. But more importantly, the scans that they're taking, whether it's of skulls or CT, like 3D scans of skulls or CT scanners, images, that those are also images that can be shared more broadly around the world. It doesn't require us to like send necessarily the specimen itself. There's some really cutting edge work related to color happening with feathers. And I think Ken's work is using eDNA techniques to understand changes in distribution. And so what I think I'm excited about is that future of thinking more expansively about how we're using collections, and then how are we using collections in ways that people who initially started those collections in 1872 could not have imagined, right? Particularly thinking about DNA sequencing, looking at changes in heavy metals that we can understand using fur and with feathers in that particular way. I could talk a lot about, but I'm not the best historian of the bell. We have a really lovely coffee table book that if someone wants to come to my office and look through. I think the focus of research has changed through time, where we had some folks previously who did a lot more work related to behavior. It did a lot more field work about tracking movement and migration and of species. But I think that our team is doing really cutting edge work, using cutting edge techniques, and we're making investments in that space, I should also say. And so we're in the process, thanks to a grant that Cassie wrote, to bring in a micro CT scanner. And we have a 3D scanner with Sushma's lab. We're upgrading our freezer equipment for better caring for our genetic resources collections and all of those DNA specimens. And so and we're actively engaged in the broader field of collections based research to really be part of those conversations that are trying to drive the field forward. Oh, hold on, I gotta put my specs on. This is what happened. You saw me age through those pictures. Now you're going to see me age through here. Have you had any exhibits that have focused on trail camera or radio collared wildlife to bring public on the journey of living and the life of XYZ? That's a really good question. we've talked about tracking and collars. We did in Seeing Birds and talked a lot about that history, which was a past exhibit. I'm trying to think about.
How we did trail camera on the main landscape or living?
Yeah, we do have trail cameras out there, but I don't think we haven't had a specific exhibit in that way. And I think that's really interesting. I met with the director of the International Wolf Center yesterday, and we had an interesting conversation, and we're thinking about, you know, some of the work that even some of your own colleagues are doing about like tracking of wildlife. And so I think that would be an exhibition that would be really appealing to the public. I hear all the time, I don't want to burst a bubble here. We get inquiries all the time from really excited and eager scientists who want to collaborate with us. And they're like, and I want to make an exhibit. And I said, and what, tell me about your vision. Like do you have $500,000 to make the exhibit? And typically there's a little bit of a mismatch in what we can do. But I think there's always opportunities because we want to keep our galleries fresh and engaging. And so we're always thinking about updates. We're always thinking about new traveling exhibits that we can bring in from other institutions. And then we do, and this could be a really cool thing for the trail cam or radio collar studies, we have gallery carts that we have that are staffed by, or that are led by volunteers, and they're usually interactive. They're on a topic, have components that people can pick up, examine, and for them to do things. And I think something on collars or trail cams can be a really cool example. So I'll pass that on to our gallery programs team. Yes, Dan.
But I have to ask about the basements.
The what? The face mates? It's been a long time. I could send you papers, but carry on.
So for like a typical human face, what are we talking in terms of species richness?
Oh, two.
Two species.
Two species. And those two species are not each other's closest relative, which is like where it gets weird. It gets real weird about how we have picked, and they're related to the Demodex mites that cause mange in dogs. In humans, it doesn't cause, well, there's some clinical, there's a lot, most of the research about Demodex mites, you could go down a very deep, dark hole if you Google this. I'm warning folks. No, but like, okay, so this is how we sample them. So the best way to sample them are to take a little bit of super glue on a glass slide. Like these are good spots. And then it's like a Biore pore strip. And you won't be able to see them with your naked eye, but if you get under a compound microscope, you can see them. And the interesting things about them, they don't have an anus, so they're not able to, they're not pooping on your face. They disintegrate. The science writer Ed Young had written a piece and talked about them like exploding when they die, when they fill up with poop. Like, I don't think they don't explode, but that's not the right word. There's some thought in the medical literature that there might be a connection with rosacea, which is, but it's not super conclusive. But we know you're not born with them, so and it's unclear, you know, probably most people pick them up through breastfeeding, but you know, not everybody breastfeeds. So like how you acquire them. Yeah. Sorry. Now, are you going to be thinking about this and feeling itchy? I mean, they're kind of cool. And I got to go to this back when I worked at NC State, the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center that was run by the USDA. It just so happened that my next door neighbor, when I lived in Maryland, worked at the systematic entomology lab there in Beltsville. And so he could introduce us to all the people who had access to the scanning electron microscope. And so we like we're taking stuff off our face and then getting it onto the slides. And some of the SEMs of the Demodex mites that came out of that were incredible. And were really, really interesting. I can send papers if you would like to see that.
This is Rob Dunn's.
This is right. Yeah. So I worked for Rob Dunn at NC State, who is he's an ecologist. He's written a number of popular science books. So The Wildlife of Our Homes, Every Living Thing, a few others. So he's always coming up with crazy ideas. His big kick right now is yeast. And being able to well, we had some of those yeast projects, but then thinking about it in a like a geographic and cultural context. So. Sourdough, yeah, we had a sourdough project. Yeah. Anything else?
Yes, we're at time.
Okay, thank you. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody online. Yes.